Assalamualaikum. We are from Group 1. My name is NURUL and my matric number is 067826. For the introduction, there are numerous debates about the limits of human rights in the name of national security and public safety in today's world, which is based with complex security risks and challenges. The use of torture is the topic of one of the most contentious of this debate. Can torture be justified as a necessary evil to extricate vital information that could protect a society? Despite the contentious nature of this debate, international law and human rights framework remain unequivocal. Torture is strictly prohibited regardless of the situation or alleged justification. This paper will examine this prohibition, its moral and legal foundation, and why it must remain inviolable despite urgent security concerns. According to the United Nations Convention Against Torture, UNCAT, torture is any act in which a person is purposefully subjected to a great pain or suffering in any effort to elicit information or a confession, punish them, intimidate or coerce them on for any other reason based on any type of discrimination. The act must be carried out by or with the approval of a public official or another individual acting in an official capacity. This definition sets the groundwork for prohibiting torture, a principle enshrined in numerous other international treaties, agreements, and customary international law. The prohibition of torture is enshrined in international law and the national laws of many countries worldwide. The defining characteristic of this prohibition is its absolute nature. There are no exception or justification. Even during war or national emergency, this non-neglectable aspect of torture prohibition distinguishes it from other human rights, many of which can be limited or suspended in certain circumstances. With this context in mind, the paper will examine the rationale behind this absolute prohibition and how it interacts with national security and public safety concepts. That's all from me. I will pass to HAWA. Thank you.
So now I will continue with my part. Ethical and moral arguments against torture. First point, dehumanization. So torture dehumanizes both the victim and the perpetrator by treating individuals as mere objects to be exploited. This disregard for their inherent worth and dignity has severe psychological and moral consequences. Torture diminishes empathy and erodes the ethical framework of the offenders, contributing to a cycle of dehumanization and cruelty. Furthermore, torture inflicts excruciating physical and psychological pain, stripping individuals of their dignity and subjecting them to degrading treatment. By reducing people to objects to be controlled and manipulated, torture violates their human rights and also undermines the fundamental principle of respecting human dignity. My next point is ineffectiveness. Torture is widely recognized as an unreliable method of obtaining information. So, under extreme stress, individuals may provide false or misleading information simply to alleviate their suffering. This makes it difficult for integrators to differentiate between the truth and fiction, rendering the information obtained through torture highly unreliable. Psychologically, torture can induce stress in the brain regions and associated with memory, leading victims to fabricate information or repeat details provided by their torturers. Next, my third point, torture can lead to worsening societal values. So, torture sets a dangerous precedent within a society. Once torture is tolerated or condoned, in certain circumstances, it becomes easier to justify it by using it in other situations. This erosion of normal norms poses a threat to the fundamental ideals that underpin a just society. Torture has been employed to suppress independent thinking and force individuals to conform to a preferred ideology. Victims are subjected to torment until they abandon their own beliefs and perspectives in favor of those imposed by their torturers. Torture also fractures societies, generating feelings of injustice, anger, and resentment among those who witness or are directly affected by these tortures and such as practices. This can lead to heightened social tensions, weakening the bonds that hold a society together and ultimately undermining social cohesiveness and stability. That's all from me. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum and hi, my name is SHERY SHAZLEENA binti MUHMAD JASNI 066158, and today I'm going to share with all of you about my part, which is legal framework and international human rights standard. A legal framework is a set of law, regulations, and also rules that govern a specific subject or area of activity. It outlines the structure and defines the rights, responsibilities, and procedure that individuals, organizations, and governments must follow. At the international level, at major legal instrument governing torture at the international level is the United Nations Convention Against Torture and Other Cruel, Inhuman, or Degrading Treatment or Punishment (CAT). The Convention Against Torture (CAT), which was adopted in 1984, defines torture and imposes duties on nations to prevent, investigate, and prosecute acts of torture. Torture is also prohibited under numerous international human rights norms, including Universal Declaration on Human Rights (UDHR), International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights (ICCPR), European Convention on Human Rights (ECHR), and also African Charter on Human and People's Rights. Though these worldwide standards highlight the total prohibition of torture, implying that there are no conditions or reasons for its use. They also demand that nations provide victims of torture with access to justice, restitution, and also rehabilitation. That's all from me. Thank you.
Do you know that torture, a controversial and deeply divisive practice, is actually an ineffective security measure? Let's dive into these intriguing topics and explore why torture failed to serve its intended purpose. Torture, often taunted as the means to extract vital information from suspected criminals or terrorists, is flawed in numerous ways. First of all, information obtained through torture is notoriously unreliable, frequently false. Countless studies and investigations have shown that torture yields inaccurate, misleading, and even fabricated intelligence. For example, the CIA use of torture following the tragic event of 9/11 failed to produce any unique or actionable intelligence that couldn't have been acquired through alternative methods. In fact, some of the information extracted under torture led to the enormous belief that Iraq possession of weapons of mass destruction and unfounded links to Al-Qaeda. Furthermore, torture negatively impacts intelligence gathering and international cooperation. Employing torture strains relationships between nations, creating distrust and undermining collaboration in global fight against terrorism and crime. For instance, where European countries facilitate the CIA's rendition and torture of detainees violated human rights convention, leading to the diplomatic tension and legal challenges. Additionally, nations that employ torture find their access to intelligence sharing diminishes as the other countries are less willing to cooperate with them. This undermines the effectiveness of joint cooperation and investigation, hindering the fights against common threat. Finally, torture inflicts significant damage on a nation's reputation. Both domestically and internationally, it tarnishes the moral standing and ethical value of that country claimed to uphold. Contradicting principles of justice, democracy, and human dignity, torture explicitly violated the international human rights standards, including the United Nations Convention Against Torture and Other Cruel, Inhuman, and Degrading Treatment or Punishment. The United States, for instance, faced widespread condemnation for its use of torture on detainees, leading to the tarnish of global reputation. In conclusion, it is abundantly clear that torture is ineffective security. Its production of false information, negative impact, intelligence gathering, and international cooperation, and damage to national and international reputation render it to fertile self-defending practice. That's all from me. Thank you.
Moving on to the next part, alternative approach to security. In order to detect possible dangers and hazards, intelligence-led policies focused on stopping crime before they started by occurring and analyzing intelligence. This method lessened the needs of reactive actions like using torture, which might violate human rights, by proactively solving security concerns. Next, intelligence analysis enables law enforcement organizations to focus their resources and efforts on certain suspects or criminal networks who are actively engaged in criminal activities. These concentrated strategies guarantees their actions are directed at legitimate suspects, supported by solid evidence while upholding the process and presumptions of innocence norm. Furthermore, intelligence-led policies is based on acquiring information in a legitimate and ethical manners. This guarantees that intelligence is gathered in accordance with human rights standards, such as respecting privacy, avoiding arbitrary detention, and abstaining from utilizing harsh interrogation tactics such as torture. A further benefit of intelligence-led policies is to promote cooperation and information exchange between various law enforcement organizations nationally and worldwide. By combining their resources, knowledge, and information, authorities may better comprehend criminal networks, deal with international crime, and encouraging the adherence to human rights norms, such as the outright ban on torture. To sum up, government may manage security risks successfully while preserving human rights, including the outright ban on torture, by using intelligence-led policies. It supports a commitment to safeguard human rights and the prohibition of torture by allowing law enforcement authorities to ensure public safety while preserving the basic right and dignity of a person.
I will now continue with the next point, which is psychological and societal consequences of torture. Torture is a deliberate and systematic infliction of physical or mental pain and suffering on a person for a specific purpose, such as obtaining information, confession, punishment, intimidation, or coercion. Torture is prohibited by international law and human rights conventions, but it is still practiced in many parts of the world. Torture has devastating effects on the victims and their families, as well as on the perpetrators and the society on a large. One of the most common and lasting consequences of torture is psychological trauma. Torture survivors often suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, a condition characterized by intrusive memories, nightmares, flashbacks, avoidance, hyperarousal, and emotional numbing. PTSD can impair the survivor's ability to function in daily life, to form and maintain relationships, to work and study, and to cope with stress. PTSD can also increase the risk of other mental health problems, such as depression, anxiety, substance abuse, and suicidal ideation. Torture has also negative impacts on the social and cultural aspects of human life. Torture can destroy the trust and cohesion within communities, especially when it is used as a tool of political repression or ethnic cleansing. Torture can create a climate of fear and suspicion among people who share a common identity or history. Torture can also hinder the process of post-conflict reconciliation and peace building by creating barriers to dialogue, forgiveness, justice, and healing. The prevention and treatment of torture and its consequences require a multidisciplinary and holistic approach that addresses the physical, psychological, social, and legal needs of the survivors and their families. The role of mental health professionals is crucial in providing evidence-based interventions that can help the survivors to recover from their trauma, to regain their dignity and self-esteem, to rebuild their lives and relationships, and to integrate into the new society. Mental health professionals can also advocate for the respect of human rights
and the prevention of torture in their countries and internationally. In a world where security concerns loom large, we must tread carefully when considering our methods. Today, we explore the ethical and moral arguments against torture and why upholding the absolute prohibition of this heinous act is crucial. The inherent value and dignity of every human being form the foundation of our argument. We believe that no individual should ever be subjected to such inhumane treatment. Our legal system and international human rights standards firmly establish the prohibition of torture. These safeguards exist to ensure that people remain safe from such grave violations. Beyond ethics, effectiveness also matters. Torture has proven to be an ineffective security measure. Information obtained through torture is unreliable, often leading to inaccurate or misleading intelligence. Instead, we advocate for alternative security measures. Law enforcement cooperation, information collection, and human rights-based strategies have shown greater success in thwarting threats while preserving individual rights. The consequences of torture reach far beyond the immediate moment. They inflict severe trauma, erode trust, and tear at the very fabric of our society. Therefore, it is imperative that we uphold the absolute prohibition of torture and explore alternative methods. By prioritizing human rights, ethics, and effective security practices, we can build a safer and more just world for all. Let us stand together, resolute in our commitment to reject torture and embrace a future where dignity and security walk hand in hand. Together, we can make a difference.